The first sign I'd texted the wrong person wasn't the reply that said, "I think you meant to send that to someone else." It was the second one, "Is your baby going to be okay?" From a stranger who somehow typed my son's name 3 messages later, even though I had never given it to him. I was on the kitchen floor because chairs felt indulgent when rent was late. The apartment hummed with the tired breath of the old fridge. The streetlight outside blinked like it was deciding whether to help. Noah's cry had slid from desperate to hoarse, the kind of sound that makes your body want to tear itself in half. I'd meant to text my brother and beg for $50 to make it to Friday. Pride is a coat you wear until the weather turns on your kid. 1 digit wrong, thumb too fast, send. "I'm sorry, wrong number. Please ignore." I added the lie people add when they want to hold a swallow them. "We'll manage." The next buzz came while I was rocking Noah with the rhythm you use when you don't have songs left. "I can help. No strings." I laughed, the dry kind that keeps you from crying. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers." "Smart policy," the stranger wrote. "I'm Jackson now, not a stranger." The name slid across my screen like a door I wasn't going to open. I put the phone down and held my son closer, counting his breaths, talking to him about meaningless things. Clouds, foxes on his blanket, how tomorrow's bottle would be better. Lies that wanted to become true if I said them softly enough. The phone buzzed again. "Just take care of Noah." My hand froze. I scrolled back through the thread. I hadn't typed my son's name. Panic came first, then Reason's quiet shoes. My first unsent plea to my brother did say his name. In the scramble, I must have copied a fragment by reflex. I told myself that, breathed it like an anchor. Still, the room felt smaller. I typed, erased, typed again. "You didn't have to reply. I'll figure it out." "You don't have to figure it out alone," came back. "Check your app." I opened Venmo because disbelieving is a habit. Numbers don't care what you think of them. $5,000 received. For a second, nothing moved. Air, heart, time, and then everything did at once. I checked twice, then a third time like repetition could invent an error. "This is too much," I wrote. "I only needed $50. It's already yours. No catch. One less thing to worry about." That's when the tears took me. Not when they repoed the car, not when daycare closed, not when the landlord taped a red notice like a scar across my door. I cried because some impossible part of the world had bent in my direction, and I didn't know how to stand under it. I said thank you 5 different ways and deleted 4 of them. I settled on, "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he wrote. "I wanted to." No emojis, no performative pity, just words that held their shape. I fed Noah water-thin formula because that was what I had left. And then, because $50 had become $5,000, I wrapped him in his fox blanket and walked to the 24-hour store under a sky that felt too big for my life. I bought the good formula, the one I always pass like a museum piece. He drank like hunger was an old enemy and fell asleep against my chest, cheek warm and damp. When the apartment went quiet, I opened a browser. Jackson Albright. A search bar can be a cliff. The results built a city I didn't live in. CEO, Helix Core, $11.8 billion. Media shy, widowed, no children. Photos where light treated him like he'd paid for it. Jaw set, tie perfect. Eyes refusing to be read. The nickname Ghost Mogul clung to the captions like lint. I looked from that man to my apartment and felt the world tilt. This wasn't a generous accountant with a soft spot. This was a person people called Sir in rooms with views. I typed, "Are you the Helix Core Jackson?" A pause that counted slowly. "Yes, but that's not useful information for you tonight." "Then what is?" I asked before fear could tell me to be quiet. "Sleep, and tell me the formula brand that works for Noah. Supplies are better than money." "Only if you mean it," I wrote. "No strings. I don't do strings. Strings are for people playing games." I wanted to distrust the sentence. I wanted to hold my skepticism like a shield and sleep behind it. I sent the details anyway, because motherhood is the act of choosing your child over your armor. I fell asleep on the mattress with the phone under my hand like a talisman. The knock woke me. Soft, polite. No one knocked here. People texted threats or shouted through walls. I slid the chain and peered out. A delivery guy stood on the landing behind a dolly stacked with boxes taller than he was. Delivery for Mira Jensen? I signed because my body knew how to write Jensen even when my brain was running diagnostics on reality. The boxes took up half the living room. I cut them open with my thumbnail because I didn't own a box cutter, and outpoured a version of my life I hadn't let myself imagine. Formula, the good kind. Diapers, sizes future-proofed. Wipes, bottles, a blanket soft as a new thought. A bottle brush I didn't know I missed. Puree pouches assembled like troops. Blackout curtains still in their wrapping. At the bottom of one box, an envelope. He should have what he needs. Noah deserves better than barely getting by. Jackson. No letterhead, no receipt. It was the opposite of a press release, quiet and direct and anonymous if I wanted to pretend it was. Gratitude and suspicion braided themselves in my chest. People don't do this without a camera. People don't do this without asking you to pay later in ways you can't afford. I waited for the catch like you wait for pain at the dentist, braced and determined to handle whatever came. Nothing came. The room breathed. I sent a photo of the fox blanket tucked up under Noah's chin and wrote, "He's full. Thank you." Then, because I needed to know, I asked, "Why are you really doing this?" "Because once, someone did it for me," he wrote, "and because no child should feel hunger the way I did. Truth has a temperature." This felt warm and heavy and refused to be rearranged into something convenient. I typed, "I'll pay you back." "For what?" "For not ignoring me." "Tell me what you want to pay forward instead," he replied. "That's more useful." The afternoon drifted, rearranged. I cleaned because control looks like Windex sometimes. I folded towels into smaller, neater versions of themselves. I finally threw away the graveyard of fast food packets in the fridge door. I kept looking at the boxes to make sure they weren't dissolving. When the sun got tired, I brewed coffee I didn't need just to prove to myself I could. Noah woke and smiled like he'd invented the color yellow. I took a breath that went all the way down. The browser icon stared at me. I could have learned everything people pretend to know about Jackson. Where he went when he disappeared from the news, which buildings had his name hidden in their wiring, who loved him before he became a circumstance. I closed the phone instead and texted, "We're okay today." "Good," he wrote. "That's how it should be." Then a minute later, "Do you work?" The question found a tender place. "I did," I typed. "Biochem diagnostics, Novagen intern, contract work until daycare closed." Then my car left, then everything else did. "Come to Helix tomorrow at 11, he wrote. "Ask for Ava, not a test, a conversation." I stared at the message, then at the boxes, then at the place in the wall where the paint chips like a map of somewhere better. "Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to take your life back, if you want it." I remembered what it felt like to belong to my brain. The labs, the quiet pride of numbers aligning under your hands, the way solutions reveal themselves if you are patient enough to let them. It felt obscene to imagine that version of me walking in a building with elevators that opened for people who were expected. "I don't have a suit," I wrote. "We don't manufacture those," he replied. "Wear what lets you breathe." Noah babbled at the fox's ear like he was delivering a keynote. I packed 5 diapers into the bag because optimism is a cousin of planning. I texted, "Okay, tomorrow at 11. Good, came back, sleep. I did what he said, and for once sleep wasn't a fight. In the hour before dawn, when the city pretends it's gentle, I woke and watched the shape of my boy breathing beside me. There are moments in a life when you can feel the hinge turning. The temptation is to pretend it isn't happening, so you aren't responsible for what it changes. I decided to be responsible. In the morning, I dressed like a person who would be allowed into a lobby. Clean jeans, blouse with buttons that still negotiated, blazer that remembered me. I tied my hair back, applied the kind of makeup that says awake more than trying, and practiced my name like they might not say it correctly if I didn't put it in the air first. Before I left, I ran a finger along the edge of the fox blanket in the nursery corner I never thought I'd have. I wrote one more message to the man whose number had been an accident until it wasn't. If this turns out to be a weird social experiment, I'm stealing the blackout curtains. A long ... then, fair, but it's not weird, it's work. See you at 11, Mira. My name looked normal there. I wanted it to stay that way. I locked the door, slid Noah into his carrier, and stepped into a hallway that had always smelled like last night. The elevator creaked like it was trying. Outside, the wind was the kind that wakes you up regardless of your intentions. I was a woman with a baby in a bag and an appointment on the 37th floor, walking toward a building where someone had built a nursery for a life like mine. A week before, I had asked for $50 and meant it. Now something larger than money had turned its head. I walked faster. The elevator doors opened to a world that didn't seem built for someone like me. The 37th floor of Helix Core gleamed with so much glass and light, it felt like stepping into a future that had already decided who belonged. I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall, wrinkled blazer, diaper bag on one shoulder, baby carrier on the other, and wondered if confidence could be faked with posture alone. A receptionist with perfect posture and kinder eyes than I expected looked up. Mira Jensen? I nodded. Mr. Albright said you'd be coming. He's finishing a call. I'll take you to Ava. The hallway was quiet in that expensive way that absorbs sound. Ava Lynn was waiting in a glass-walled office that somehow managed to feel alive. Plants, color, actual sunlight. She rose when I entered, extended a hand that was firm but warm. So you're the woman who texted our CEO in the middle of the night? She said with the faintest smile. I'm sorry about that, I said. Don't be. She gestured for me to sit. It's the most human thing that's happened in this building in months. Before I could answer, a soft chime interrupted us. Ava glanced at her screen. He's ready. Jackson Albright's office wasn't the penthouse-style command center I expected. It was spare. 2 chairs, a wide desk, and a view of the city that didn't seem to impress him. He stood when we entered. No tie, sleeves rolled. The light caught in the streaks of gray near his temples. He looked exactly like the man from the headlines and nothing like them at all. Mira, he said, walking around the desk. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure if this was an interview or an intervention, I said before my nerves could censor me. He smiled faintly. Maybe a little of both. He motioned to the chair opposite his. I read your resume. You undersell yourself. I wasn't exactly in a position to brag, I said. You ran calibration trials at Novagen, published twice before 27. That's not small. Those were teams, I said. He studied me. You left when your son was born. I left when my contract ended and daycare cost more than my paycheck. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or guilt that didn't belong to him. You don't owe me explanations, he said. I asked you here because I need someone who notices things other people ignore. Your audit logs from that night, your pattern recognition, were better than half my staff's analytics reports. I was just trying to make sense of numbers, I said. Exactly, he replied. Numbers tell stories. Most people just don't listen long enough. He leaned back. Helix Core handles biomedical R&D data. We rely on precision. But lately, things haven't added up. I've suspected internal issues, maybe fraud, maybe incompetence. I've had 3 teams look, and they found nothing. I want you to look. I blinked. You want me to audit your company? Quietly, he said. As a consultant, Ava will handle logistics. There's a small nursery across from the data room. You'll have access, and you can bring Noah. The mention of my son landed like a shock. You built a nursery? Years ago, he said simply, for employees who needed it. They stopped using it when it became easier to hide the need. I didn't trust it, not yet. Why me? Because you have no alliances here. No reason to protect anyone's ego. And if I say no, he hesitated, then I'll still be grateful you texted me that night. But I hope you'll say yes. Ava placed a folder on the table. Non-disclosure, contractor terms, a modest salary that looked extravagant compared to nothing. I looked at Noah, asleep in his carrier beside the chair, and then at the man across from me who could ruin or rebuild a life with a single wire transfer. I'll need a week's notice before quitting, I said. He smiled. You start tomorrow. The nursery turned out to be an oasis tucked between 2 corridors of glass and chrome. Someone had once loved this room, murals of constellations, a rocking chair, a kitchenette stocked with supplies no one had touched in years. Ava stood by the door while I took it in. Jackson doesn't do symbolic gestures, she said quietly. If he says you belong here, you do. I'm not sure I believe that yet. Then let the work convince you. By the end of the first day, I had 4 access badges, 3 temporary passwords, and a headache from staring at rows of vendor invoices that almost, but not quite, balanced. Helix's system was designed like a fortress, layers of encryption and redundancy. But I noticed a rhythm in the anomalies. Small discrepancies, all within tolerance limits, spread across multiple quarters and divisions. Someone had built a ghost into the system, just subtle enough to survive audits. At 6, I realized Noah hadn't woken in hours. Panic rose until I looked through the nursery camera feed and saw him dreaming under the soft glow of the nightlight. I let myself breathe. Then a shadow crossed my doorway. Jackson leaned against the frame, sleeves rolled higher, expression unreadable. Still here? I lost track of time. That happens when the puzzle starts to talk back, he said. He stepped closer, scanning the screen. What are you seeing? Micro transfers, 300 here, 400 there. Random vendors, but the same pattern of rounding. He frowned. Deliberate? Elegant, I said. Whoever did this wanted to stay invisible. He studied the data, then me. Can you trace it? Eventually. But whoever's behind it has authority. They know how the internal audits work. Then don't trust anyone until we're sure. He sounded tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying too much control for too long. Why didn't you bring in a forensic team, I asked. I did. Twice. They told me everything was fine. And you didn't believe them? He looked out toward the city. When you build something from nothing, you learn how honesty sounds. This company doesn't sound like it used to. We stood in the glow of too many monitors. Outside, the world continued its indifference. Inside, the hum of machines filled the space between us. I can stay late, I said. No, he said quickly. Go home. Take Noah. The numbers will wait. I can't afford another exhausted genius. Another? He almost smiled. That's a story for another day. That night, back in my small apartment, the glow from the boxes he'd sent still filled the living room like quiet ghosts. I opened my laptop and scrolled through the data again. 3 vendors. Each one existed on paper. Each one dissolved when you tried to touch it. Trinox Solutions, Ormetus Research, Zenith Distribution. I followed one address to a warehouse that didn't exist. The zip code was off by 1 digit. A deliberate error, the kind that only appears when someone is confident no one's checking. I drafted an email to Jackson. I think your ghost has a name. Then I hesitated and deleted it. Better to verify before I made claims. Noah stirred, and I lifted him gently, his small fingers curling around my collar. I whispered, "We're okay, remember?" The truth was, I didn't know what we were stepping into, but for the first time in a long time, tomorrow didn't look empty. The next morning, Ava met me at the elevator. "Jackson's asking for you," she said. When I reached his office, he was staring at a single sheet of paper. He handed it to me. A transaction report, one of the phantom vendors. The account had just been accessed 5 hours ago from inside the building. "Someone knows you're looking," he said. I met his eyes, felt the weight of the air between us shift. "Then we'd better move fast," I said. The door closed behind us like a seal on a secret neither of us could unmake. The first time I saw the name Trinox Solutions repeat across 5 departments, I thought it was a coincidence. By the 10th, I knew I was staring at something deliberate. Every payment, every invoice, every signature, approved, identical, untraceable to an actual person. The strange thing wasn't how perfect it looked. It was how quiet it felt. Perfect fraud doesn't shout. It hums in tune with the system until someone like me hears the wrong note. Jackson leaned over my shoulder as the report rendered on screen. His scent was faintly metallic, the smell of someone who lived inside server rooms and boardrooms equally. "You're sure?" he asked. "Trinox has no employees," I said. "No tax records, no payroll, no registered assets. But it's been billing Helix for consulting analysis since 2021. Small increments across different divisions. It's designed to look like background noise." He studied the numbers like they were a confession. "Who approved the first payment?" "Vincent Harmon," I said. "Your CFO." The name hit the air like a dropped wrench. Jackson exhaled slowly. That explains why the audits found nothing. He writes the rules they audit against. Should I confront him? No, he said too quickly. Not yet. If we tip him off, he'll bury the evidence. He straightened, shoulders tightening as if old instincts were surfacing. You keep following the trail. Quietly. If you need resources, use Keller. Who's Keller? A forensic accountant I trust, he said. Former FBI, unofficially consulting for us. She's the reason Helix is still standing. I nodded, but the question behind my ribs wouldn't quiet. Why trust me? Why now? Maybe he saw it on my face because he added softly. You see patterns no one else wants to see. Sometimes that's the only difference between surviving and sinking. Ava found me 2 hours later hunched over my desk, eyes burning from the spreadsheet glare. He told me you found something, she said. Something's putting holes in your balance sheets. Then patch them before the sharks smell blood. Her tone was calm, but her knuckles were white around the folder she carried. She laid it down. These are board communications. You didn't get them from me. I flipped it open. The emails were polite daggers, Vincent subtly undermining Jackson's judgment, framing him as overcommitted to emotional philanthropy. One message suggested replacing Jackson temporarily for stability optics. Ava's voice dropped. He's building a narrative, our CEO as a distracted visionary, easy to blame when this leaks. If the board believes him first, truth won't matter. And if I find the proof before he moves, then you rewrite the ending, she said, and left before I could answer. That night I stayed after everyone left. The building emptied the way ocean tides pull back before a storm, silent but tense. I fed queries into the archive system, tracing Trinox's vendor ID across years of contracts. The deeper I went, the more the data began to warp. Log files appeared and vanished in milliseconds. IP pings looped back to internal servers that shouldn't exist. Then a text appeared on my screen, plain white font over black. You shouldn't be here, Mira. My heart slammed against my ribs. I glanced at the security camera in the corner, its red LED unblinking. I typed, "Who is this?" No reply. The message vanished. The cursor blinked, waiting. Seconds later, my system crashed. I sat there in the glow of a dead monitor, pulse racing, when a soft knock at the glass made me jump. Jackson stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. You're supposed to have gone home hours ago, he said. I think someone knows what I'm doing. He frowned, stepping in. What happened? I explained. Trinox, the ghost logins, the message. He set the cups down and pulled out his phone, fingers moving fast. Security will pull access log, he said, but you did the right thing not answering further. I did answer, I admitted. He looked at me sharply. And? Nothing. They disappeared. That's not nothing, he said grimly. That's someone with root access. Meaning? Meaning Vincent, or someone protecting him. 2 days later, Keller called. Her voice was clipped, professional, the kind of tone that belonged in congressional hearings. I got Jackson's message. You found Trinox? I found its footprints, I said, but they're vanishing. That's what happens when the hunter notices he's being hunted, she said. Send me your last verified file tree. I'll mirror it off-network. Off-network? Trust me, you don't want Helix servers knowing what we're building. Keep your work on an external drive, encrypted. Print hard copies if you must. Paper doesn't lie the way code does. Something about her certainty steadied me. What do you need from me? Courage, she said. The kind people forget they had until it's tested. The following week, Vincent made his move. He summoned me to the executive conference room to review departmental discrepancies. The man was charisma weaponized, tailored suit, voice smooth as varnish. Mira Jensen, he said warmly, our miracle auditor. Jackson speaks highly of you. I just look at numbers, I said carefully. Ah, but you see things. I admire that. He gestured toward the table where several files lay open. These, for instance, impressive pattern recognition, but your conclusions are premature. He pushed a sheet toward me, a printout of my audit draft, the one I'd never sent to anyone but Jackson. My stomach dropped. How did you? Helix is a transparent company, he interrupted smoothly. We share everything for the good of the mission. Surely you understand. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. I appreciate your ambition, but chasing ghosts can end careers, especially when those ghosts protect the people who pay you. The warning was gentle, almost paternal. That made it worse. I only follow data, I said. Good. Then follow it back to where it belongs. His smile didn't reach his eyes. We all serve the same house here, Ms. Jensen. Best not to burn it down from the inside. He dismissed me with a nod, but as I turned to leave, he added softly, Tell Jackson I said hello. In the elevator, I pressed my thumb against my laptop bag until it hurt. The walls reflected a woman trying to look composed and failing. When the doors opened, Ava was waiting. You met him, she said. How did you? Word travels faster than good intentions here. She stepped inside. You need to back up your work, off-site, now. I already did. Good, because if Vincent has your files, he'll alter timestamps to make it look like you fabricated the data. I stared. He'd risk that? He's desperate, Ava said, and desperate men rewrite morality in real time. That night, Keller's message came through encrypted chat. Pattern confirmed. Vincent controls 3 shell companies, Trinox, Ormetis, Zenith. Each routes funds to the same Cayman account. Owner ID, encrypted, but signature hash matches Helix CFO credentials. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. We have him, I typed. Not yet, Keller replied. Evidence isn't enough. We need him to act while being watched. I'll bait the hook. Tell Jackson, be ready. When I told Jackson, he was silent for a long time. Then he said, You realize what happens if this leaks without proof? The board fires me, buries you, and Vincent walks away richer. Then we don't leak, I said. We trap him. He looked at me, really looked, and I saw something in his eyes that wasn't just trust. It was the shared recognition of people who'd already lost too much to back down. You were supposed to audit, he said quietly. Now you're in a war. Then let's win it. He nodded once. Ava will secure Keller's line. You'll work from my office until this is over. Won't that look suspicious? It'll look like what it is, he said. A CEO taking care of his most valuable analyst. I opened my laptop, adrenaline replacing fear. Outside, the city burned in glass reflections, 1,000 little lies glittering in the dark. Somewhere above them all, a man who thought himself untouchable was about to find out what happens when you underestimate someone who's had to fight for baby formula. The morning Keller set the bait, the building felt like it was holding its breath. She'd uploaded a bland memo to the shared drive, internal audit realignment, executive vendor review scheduled next week, and then she'd vanished back into her encrypted channels with a message to me. He'll look. He can't help it. Watch the logs. So I watched. At 9:13 a.m., Trinox's vendor profile was accessed from an internal terminal in finance. 2 minutes later, Ormetis. At 9:19, Zenith. The logins were clean, the kind you'd want on a poster. Correct tokens, valid signatures, no alarms. Too perfect. The device fingerprint behind them, though, the invisible tattoo every machine leaves, matched the same endpoint I'd seen in those ghost approvals. I texted Jackson a single word, biting, then opened the live internal feed for Conference B. Ava stepped into my doorway without knocking, reading my screen with one glance. He's asked for Jackson, she said. Now. He knows we're watching, I said. He thinks he's choreographed it. Ava's mouth flattened. Men like Vincent only understand 2 kinds of light, spotlight and sunlight. He came dressed for the first. He's about to meet the second. I left Noah sleeping in the glass nursery, checked the camera twice, and slid into the small room 1 floor above the conference suite where 2 clean monitors and a pot of cruel coffee kept company. The feed bloomed into view, the long table, the 2 chairs at opposite ends, like an old war reenacted, the skyline cut into polite rectangles by the blinds. Jackson was already seated when Vincent arrived. Navy suit, perfect knot, the patient smile of a man who believes gravity is optional. No audio, just body language and the cadence of power. Vincent set a silver flash drive on the table like a coin for the ferryman. He spoke with his hands, palms up, conciliatory theater. Jackson didn't touch the drive. He answered in sentences as short as blades. Ava's text popped. Board members on standby. Keller has AG liaison on hold. Do not move. I didn't plan to. I watched. Vincent leaned in, said something quick, and let the smile sharpen. Jackson's posture didn't change, but the temperature in the room did. It's strange how you can feel a conversation through glass. I watched Vincent gesture toward the hallway, toward the ceiling, toward me, I realized with a pinch of nausea, and then spread his hands in a parody of sorrow. He slid a folder across the table. Even through the camera's eye, I recognized the format. Printouts of internal transfers, annotated emails, calendar entries. A lab-grown narrative. He was presenting evidence. My phone buzzed again. Keller. He's moving to frame. Let him present. We need it logged. I leaned closer. Jackson turned one page. Another. He said something calm that made heat flare in Vincent's ears. The kind of flush a camera can't hide. Then Jackson spoke 3 words. I couldn't hear them, but I could read the shape. You're suspended, Vince. The door opened and 2 security officers stepped in, quiet as punctuation. Vincent's smile didn't crack, but it curdled. He stood with the dignity of a man certain he'd win on appeal. On his way out, he touched the flash drive with one finger and said something with his lips shaped around Friday and resign. The door closed behind him without drama. The room held the shape of him for a second, then let it go. My hands were shaking. I hadn't breathed in a full minute. When I finally did, the air tasted like copper. Ava appeared beside me as if she'd been printed there. He came with a story, she said. We're going to need a better one. What's on the drive? The version where Jackson siphoned funds and bought influence, she said. And the version where you're the bribe. $5,000 for fabricated audits. My face burned. He's using the formula money. Of course he is, Ava said flatly. He can't fathom help without a string, so he's decided to draw one. I swallowed hard. The board? Nervous, she said, but no one wants to be on the wrong headline when Keller's packet lands. That buys us hours, not days. The hours weren't kind. Internal emails multiplied like bad rumors. A burner account sent me a neat little dossier full of lies, credit cards I didn't have, a lease I never signed, an implication I had traded reports for gifts. Keller told me to archive, not answer. I obeyed and worked. I didn't have the luxury of being stunned. By noon, the device fingerprint hit again. This time, not to the vendor profiles, but to the approval logs. Vincent was scrubbing. I watched entries flicker in and out like fireflies, a sign of hands moving too fast on a system used to steady touches. I took screenshots, printed to PDF, exported raw tables to an external drive cold as a coin. I printed paper, too. Time-stamped, messy, analog. Keller's voice was in my ear. Paper doesn't lie the way code does. At 1:07 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't want to, but I answered. Impressive trick, Vincent said, velvet over steel. Baiting me with a memo? Sweet. Amateur, but sweet. Stop calling my phone, I said. Or what? He said, almost amused. You'll audit me? Listen carefully, Ms. Jensen. You're not a hero. You're a prop. Jackson needed someone naive enough to do his cleanup and sympathetic enough for the press. It's cute. It won't last. You fabricated emails, I said. You built a vendor to eat this company from the inside out. He sighed like I disappointed him. Do you know what this place was before me? Chaos. I gave it discipline. That money kept projects on time, kept investors smiling, kept the board lazy. This is how grown-ups build empires, one efficient compromise at a time. You stole, I said. I optimize, he corrected. And here's the problem with your little fairy tale. By the time you prove the theft, no one will care. They'll be too busy looking at you. Single mother, wrong number, billionaire savior. It writes itself. You'll drown in your own narrative before you ever drown me. I hung up. My hands wanted to shake. I made them type. At 2:30 p.m., Keller's chat pinged. AG received our packet. Federal liaison looped. We need an internal trigger, something irrefutable. What does that look like, I asked. An approval executed under an impossible condition, she replied. Same device, 2 user identities within a time window, closed by physics. I thought of the schedule, of the way Vincent loved to cluster his ghosts around meetings, as if legitimacy could be contagious. I dug through calendars, through ID tokens, through logs. There, 11:42 a.m., board prep. At 11:43, an approval from Finance Analyst 3. At 11:44, an override from CFO. Same device, same MAC hash, same physical location. The two users had been in different rooms at that moment, one on a Zoom to Singapore, the other in Conference B performing innocence. I packaged it, annotated it, printed it, sent it to Keller with a subject line she'd appreciate. Physics says hi. 2 minutes later, beautiful, sending. The beautiful became brutal fast. By 3:10 p.m., the board convened an emergency session, cameras off. Ava shut herself in a glass cube, eyes a constellation of reflections on her screen. Jackson didn't attend. He stayed at his table, hands open on the wood like a man willing to be read. I took Noah home. The safe house felt like exile and sanctuary at once. I laid him down, kissed the unreasonably soft place at his temple, and watched him surrender to sleep like he trusted the world. Then I opened my laptop and stepped back into the noise. The headlines were already feeding. Helix CFO under scrutiny. Sources. Ghost credentials at biotech giant. Whistleblower sparks internal upheaval. They didn't have my name, but they had my outline. Comment sections did what they do, took what little they knew and built a bonfire. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't know. Acquaintances, strangers, reporters who couched hunger as curiosity. Keller's thread cut through it. Board suspended Vincent pending investigation. External audit announced. Get ready. He'll hit first if he thinks he's losing. As if summoned, another unknown number. This time I didn't pick up. A voicemail transcribed itself. You made a mistake, Mira. Jackson can't save you from the narrative I've already written. Delete. At 6:43 p.m., Helix posted a press release exactly the length Keller had predicted. Helix Corp announces suspension of Chief Financial Officer pending investigation, cooperating with state and federal authorities. Preliminary findings indicate irregular vendor activity and unauthorized credential use. Clinical, cold, precise, no names but the important one. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I walked to the tiny kitchen and let the kettle boil loud enough to swallow my breath. I thought about the first night, the wrong number, the polite knock, the fox blanket. I thought about how far we'd come and how far we might still fall. I thought about physics. The call from Jackson came late. It's done, he said. His voice sounded like it had been through a long hallway. He's out, not gone, but out. Timestamps? I asked, because we were people now who used time as proof we were right. Board meeting at 3, suspension at 3:13, statement at 6:43. Keller's packet logged at the AG at 3:19. We beat his narrative by 24 minutes. I closed my eyes. He'll come for me. I know, he said. We have counsel standing by. Keller's team will babysit your devices. Ava set up a shadow route if you need to enter or exit the building unseen. You anticipated all of this, I said. No, he said. I anticipated losing. I didn't anticipate you. The silence after that line wasn't empty. It held something we hadn't said yet, and something we didn't have to. We're not done, I said. No, he agreed, but today we made the truth louder than the theater. After we hung up, the apartment settled. The city outside gossiped in lights. I sat on the floor beside Noah's crib and watched the steady climb of his breath. There is a part of me that will always be the woman on the kitchen floor with an empty formula tin and nowhere left to turn. There is another part now, the one who can read patterns in the dark and refuse to act surprised when the dark reads back. A notification lit the screen. Photo attachment from an unknown contact. My thumb hovered. I opened it. It was a scan of a framed printout, grainy, captioned in a hand I recognized. The first text that changed both of us. Under the original lines, I'm sorry to bother you. $50. Someone had written, you paid it back. No signature. No need. I put the phone down and let the words sit in the room like a candle you don't have to watch. Tomorrow would be for picking up the pieces and arranging them into a shape that could stand. Tonight was for knowing we'd survived the first hit. Vincent Harmon smiled the way men smile when they already believe they've won. The flash drive on the table glinted under the recessed lights, a little piece of leverage disguised as metal. From her office one floor above, Mira watched every detail through the internal feed. Jackson was a still point at the end of the long conference table, composed, cold, too calm. She couldn't hear the words, only the motion of them, the measured rise and fall of hands. Vincent leaned back, self-satisfied, saying something that made Jackson's jaw tighten. Then, without warning, Vincent slid the drive closer, like he was pushing a confession across the line. Jackson didn't touch it. He just said something that made Vincent's posture shift from lazy to alert. Even without sound, Mira recognized the rhythm of confrontation, the stillness before detonation. When Vincent finally left, his shoulders squared and his smile intact, Jackson didn't move for nearly a full minute. He sat there, elbows on the table, fingers steepled, staring at the drive like it was a loaded gun. Mira closed the feed and exhaled, realizing her hands were trembling. She didn't see him for hours. Reports flew through internal channels, meetings canceled, calendar blocked out. At 5:30, she printed everything she'd compiled so far. Vendor maps, ghost credential logs, device ID matches. She couldn't wait for him to call. She walked straight to his office and opened the door without knocking. Jackson was at the window, blinds half drawn, the city behind him a river of light. He didn't turn when she spoke. "I saw everything." His voice was low, tired. "You weren't supposed to. You really think I'd just sit at my desk while he cornered you? He walked in with evidence, didn't he? Something he thinks can bury you." Now he turned, the faint gray under his eyes stark against the lamplight. "He claims to have emails and transaction records, falsified, to make it look like I used company funds for personal projects. He's already fed the board half of it. They're nervous. Then fight back. If I do it wrong, I burn the company. If I do nothing, he takes it. Either way, he wins first." "No," she said, setting the folder on his desk. "We win first, and you said it yourself. He's using ghost credentials. We have proof. You just have to make it loud enough that no one can twist it." He stared at her for a long moment, and then looked down at the folder. "And if he twists you? He already knows your name." She hesitated, remembering the way Vincent's mouth had moved on the feed. "Your new pet accountant." The disdain had rolled off him like cologne. "Let him try," she said quietly. Jackson nodded once, as if he'd been waiting for that. "There's one person left who can help. Off books, former FBI. She's been tracking internal corruption for me since before you arrived. Keller, if she verifies what you found, we'll have enough to take it public." "When?" "Tonight. I'll connect you. She'll test you first. Don't tell her anything you can't prove." He scribbled an address and an access code on a slip of paper. "Safe House. It's under a subsidiary's name. Take Noah and go there tonight. Keller will call." Mira's throat tightened. "You think he'll come after me?" "I think he'll panic, and men like Vincent don't panic quietly." By the time Noah was asleep in the carrier, the apartment looked like the ghost of itself, half-packed, half-lit, half-real. She moved fast. Laptop, flash drives, the Fox blanket, the one photo that hadn't been repossessed by time. The safe house was in a quiet neighborhood where the street lamps hummed like lullabies. Inside, everything smelled new: coffee, dust, and the faint trace of lemon cleaner. The call came exactly 10 minutes after she locked the door. "Miss Jensen," a woman's voice said, crisp and measured. "This is Keller. Jackson tells me you're the one who found the break." "I'm the one who noticed," Mira said. "He's the one who believed it meant something." "Start from the beginning," Keller said, "and don't leave anything out." Mira did. Every number, every pattern, every whisper of data that had crawled under her skin and refused to leave. Keller didn't interrupt. When Mira finished, the silence stretched thin before Keller spoke again. "You're good," she said finally. "Better than most auditors I've worked with. If even half of what you've told me is in those files, we can bury him and anyone covering for him. What happens next? We verify, then bait the trap." Verification took less than 12 hours. Mira barely slept. By dawn, Keller had sent an encrypted message. Data confirmed. Prepping decoy. Attached was a draft of a memo, polished to look like an internal HR announcement. To all department heads, due to upcoming compliance evaluations, There will be a review of all executive vendor contracts beginning next week. It looked routine, banal, harmless, which made it perfect bait. Keller uploaded it into the shared Helix core system under a directory Vincent's assistant could access. Then they waited. At 11:42 a.m., Keller pinged her again. He bit. Memo accessed 3 times in 2 hours. Twice by his team, once by his own login. Mira felt her pulse in her throat. He knows, she whispered. Keller's reply came fast. Good, let him. He'll move to cover himself. That's when we trap him. By evening, Jackson called from a secure line. His voice was steady but low. He's making his move. What did he do? He submitted an ethics complaint to the board. Claims I diverted funds into personal accounts to bribe an external hire. You? Mira went cold. He actually named me? He wants you out first, Jackson said. He isolates, discredits, then removes. It's his pattern. So he's betting they'll believe him. Some will, but not all. Not if we go first. There was the faint scrape of him pacing. You ready to do this publicly? Mira looked at Noah asleep on the couch, tiny chest rising and falling under the fox blanket. I've been ready since the day I texted the wrong number. The press release dropped at 6:43 p.m. sharp. Helix Core investigates high-level financial misconduct. The company has initiated a full internal audit into vendor irregularities and misappropriated payments discovered by an independent review. Short, precise, impossible to spin. Keller's team delivered their report to the state attorney's office minutes later, 38 pages of documentation, system logs, and verified transactions. The first wave hit the financial blogs within an hour, followed by tech media, followed by the national feeds. The word whistleblower began trending before Mira could even process that it meant her. At 8:05 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Impressive, Vincent said. I underestimated you. Get used to it, she said, voice calm though her hands shook. I wanted to destroy Jackson, he said. You were supposed to be a footnote. Instead, you're a problem. Funny, she said. That's how most women in power get noticed. By being inconvenient. He laughed, the dry, humorless sound of someone whose arrogance was cracking. You think this ends here? Jackson might crawl out of this, but you're disposable. Always have been. Mira hung up before he could finish. The silence that followed was heavy but clean. The next morning she woke to a storm. Her inbox was an avalanche, interview requests, congratulations, threats disguised as curiosity. Keller had marked half of them for deletion. Jackson hadn't texted, but she didn't need him to. The news had already answered the question. Helix Core CFO under investigation for fraud and misconduct. Anonymous whistleblower exposes multi-million-dollar scheme. She brewed coffee and stood at the window while Noah babbled to the morning light. Her reflection looked steadier than she felt. The phone buzzed again. Ava this time. He's coming for a final meeting. 9:01 a.m. top floor. Just him and Jackson. Mira typed back. Should I be there? Ava's reply came fast. Jackson says no. I say yes. Stay back, but don't leave. She read the message twice and then gathered Noah, his toys, her laptop. Whatever happened next would decide everything. Who stayed, who fell, and whether the truth could still matter when money was louder. At 9:01 a.m., she opened the live feed again. 2 figures, 1 table. No masks left. She braced herself. Whatever came next wouldn't be a meeting. It would be the reckoning. The feed cut to a blank room, and for the first time in days, the building exhaled. Not relief, something closer to inevitability. Sunlight knifed the conference table into neat bands. Dust motes drifted like they were tired of being told where to go. I watched the empty chairs a beat longer, then closed the window and listened. Somewhere down the hall, a printer ran hot. Somewhere deeper, an elevator dinged, low and final. Ava appeared in my doorway with the look of someone who had already triaged 3 crises and was auditioning a 4th. Board went into emergency session, she said. Cameras off. Counsel in the room. Keller's packets at the AG. And Vincent? I asked. Suspended pending investigation, she replied. Badge deactivated. Security walked him down. How'd he take it? With cheekbones, she said dryly. He'll do his talking to the press. My phone buzzed, a news alert, then another. Helix Corp suspends CFO amid vendor irregularities. State AG confirms cooperation. Sources: ghost credentials at biotech giant. The headlines multiplied, feeding on each other like a chain reaction. In the comments, strangers invented biographies for me, built a halo and a cross out of the same four facts. Single mother, wrong number, billionaire, formula. Don't look, Ava said, a fraction too late. I wasn't planning to, I lied. She leaned her shoulder against the frame, arms folded. Keller wants a debrief at 3. After that, disappear. You have the shadow route? I tapped my pocket. Card and code. Good. She started to go, then paused. Mira? Yeah? Eat something before you debrief. It's easier to hold a line on a full stomach. I smiled despite the noise in my skull. Working on it. By noon, Helix pushed an update that read like the rhythm section under a melody. External forensic firm engaged. Federal liaison looped. Preliminary findings indicate unauthorized credential activity and misuse of vendor approvals. No names, no theater. Just the bones. Keller's call came at 12:30. The device collision you found was our linchpin, she said, her voice the same clipped calm, whether she was teaching or testifying. Same endpoint ID, 2 user identities, physical impossibility logged to the millisecond. Neither a jury nor God argues with physics. What now? Now we move from preservation to prosecution. I want you off Helix networks for 72 hours. Work on a clean machine. I'm posting a guard on your building. Is that, I swallowed, necessary? Yes, she said gently. He's cornered. Cornered animals don't Google ethics. Keep your devices on you. If anything feels off, call Ava, then call me. I glanced through the glass to the nursery. Noah was on his back, legs bicycling in the air, fox blanket crooked across his middle like a sash. Copy, I said. At 2, Ava reappeared with a cardboard box. Inside, a burner phone, a hard drive in an anti-static bag, a station badge with a name that wasn't mine. Temporary, she said. You'll hate it. I already do. She set it down and lowered her voice. He put out a statement through a friendly outlet. Frames himself as a reformer punished for efficiency. He isn't naming you yet, but he's hinting at outside influence compromising internal process. He's aiming at Jackson, I said. He's aiming at you to get to Jackson, she corrected. Either way, we're ahead. Stay that way. Keller's debrief at 3 was a chessboard turned into slides. Timeline, method, artifacts, next moves. We've secured the Cayman tier transfers, the shell company registrations, and the internal comms, she said. Council's drafting warrants. Expect contact from federal agents for a preliminary interview. Will my name be public? I asked. Not if I can help it, she said. But the silhouette is out there. Decide now what you won't read. I'll decide what I will, I said, because control had to live somewhere. After the call, the day softened in the way days do when the hard part is over, but the consequences haven't arrived. I packed Noah's bag, diapers, wipes, a bottle, the toy he loved with a loyalty that made me want to cry. I shut down my workstation and logged out of everything. Paper copy of the physics collision went into a folder with my name on the tab. The original sat in Keller's secure drive, like a scar in amber. I found Jackson in his office with his jacket off and his hands braced on the edge of the table like he was ready to lift the building. The blinds were half closed, which meant he was thinking and possibly remembering to breathe. How bad? I asked. He tilted his head, listening to a list only he could hear. Bad enough, he said, but not fatal. You sound almost okay. He rubbed his thumb along the grain of the table. My board asked me how we missed it. I told them we built a system with more curtains than mirrors. They didn't laugh. You told the truth, I said. It's gone out of style, but it still fits. He exhaled, a sound that might have been a laugh if he'd slept more. Keller says the AG's office will move on charges. Federal will follow. We'll have months of cleanup. The difference is we'll be cleaning, not bleeding. I handed him the folder with the paper copy. For your records, I said. He flipped it open, scanned the first page. then closed it carefully as if it were something alive. Physics says hi? Keller's sense of humor is contagious. He looked up then, really looked at me, the way you look when you're memorizing a face before a storm. There's one more thing, he said. We can wait if you want, but I'd rather ask you while I still remember how to be direct. I frowned and he smiled in that brief, surprised way he did when his reflexes beat his polish. I want you to stay, he said simply. Not as a consultant, as Director of Internal Integrity. It's a misfit title for a job I should have created years ago. It reports to me and no one else. You build the team. You set the pulse. You tell me where the mirrors go. The room was very quiet. Somewhere on the other side of the glass, a printer spit out a document voters in another room would sign. I stared at the single page he slid across the table. Clean, specific, respectful. The number was fair without being performative. The authority was real. I'm a single mom who texted a stranger for $50, I said, because sometimes you have to say the past out loud so it doesn't think it still owns you. You're the reason my company didn't implode, he said, and the person I trust to make sure I never have to choose between speed and honesty again. What about optics? I asked. Headlines love a narrative arc. They'll fit me into the nearest one and set it on fire. They can write whatever shape they want, he said. We'll do the work. The work survives. My eyes stung. I blinked and pretended it was the office air. I want to read this when I'm not adrenalized, I said. Good, he replied. That's the first thing I need in this role. Someone who waits the extra 10 minutes. Also my terms, I said, because the woman who had learned to bargain over utility bills was not dead, just less cornered. Nursery stays, flexible hours aren't a perk. They're oxygen, and I pick my deputies without board fingerprints. He didn't even pretend to consider. Yes, yes, and yes. And I get to tell you when you're wrong. That's the job, he said softly. We stood at the same time, as if the room had reached its capacity for sitting. He turned toward the nursery glass as if pulled by gravitational memory. On the other side, Noah had discovered his toes again and looked very pleased about it. Do you ever get used to the feeling that a decision is going to change your whole life? I asked. No, he said. Then after a beat, but sometimes you get used to making the right ones. The shadow route out of the building took me through a service corridor that smelled like cardboard and lemon cleanser, then down a freight elevator that spoke only to people with codes. I stepped into late light with a baby on my chest and a manila envelope in my bag, and for once the city didn't feel like a thing I had to survive. It felt like a thing that might root for me if I asked it nicely. The safe house was quiet the way hotel rooms are. Politely, impersonally, I made pasta while the television whispered captions of pundits who were slowly remembering the difference between allegation and evidence. A panel of experts argued about corporate governance and whistleblowers and the human element. No one on the screen had ever rocked a baby to sleep while printing audit logs, but they meant well. My phone pulsed with messages I could ignore. Journalists, distant acquaintances, trolls practicing literacy. Keller, I answered. Ava, always, and then Jackson. Jay, you home? Me. Yes. Pasta victory achieved. Jay, Keller says agents will want a preliminary tomorrow afternoon. She'll be there. Wear what lets you breathe. Me. Is that a Helix dress code? Jay. It's a life code. How's Noah? Me. Convinced his feet are new friends. You? Jay. Learning how to sit. You were right about waiting the extra 10 minutes. I looked at the envelope on the counter, at my name printed neatly at the top of a job description that felt like a new spine. I thought about the night I texted a stranger and the morning boxes had filled a room I didn't think could hold hope. I thought about the smell of lemon cleanser in a corridor that was technically an exit, but had felt like an entrance. When Noah finally fell into the heavy sleep of a child who considers the day conquered. I washed dishes and let my hands remember that the easiest truths are warm water and soap and a body that has done enough. I opened the window and let the city air in. Distant sirens, someone laughing. Somewhere, a couple fighting their way back to okay. At 10, a notification blinked. State AG issues statement. Criminal charges being prepared. Cooperation acknowledged. Courageous internal reporting credited. The phrase made my skin do something complicated. Courage isn't an identity. It's an action you repeat until you can sleep. I closed the alert and turned the volume down on the universe. I took the envelope out and read every line again, slower this time. It wasn't charity. It wasn't even gratitude. It was an invitation to build a room inside a building that would keep telling the truth even when the lights went out. I signed nothing. Not yet. Tomorrow I would take a pen to it or I wouldn't. Tonight I took something else. A breath that went all the way to the bottom. Around midnight, the intercom buzzed once. A guard changing shifts as promised. The world remembered me, then left me alone. On the counter, my phone lit up with a final message. Jay, we did the hard part. The rest is building. Sleep. Me, bossy. Jay, accurate. I smiled into the dark. The safe house smelled like lemon and basil and a future I hadn't budgeted for. I lay down next to the crib and listened to my son breathe. For months, my life had been a series of narrow bridges over bad water. Now, for the first time, there was something like a shoreline. We weren't done. Consequences had long shadows. But we had turned the lights on, and for tonight, that was enough. Morning came slow and gentle. For the first time in months, there was no siren under my ribs. Just quiet, the kind that doesn't need to apologize for existing. Sunlight slipped through the blinds in thin ribbons across Noah's crib. He stirred, then laughed in his sleep, that soft, unguarded sound that makes the world worth fighting for. I brewed coffee, real coffee, not the cheap brand that smelled like resignation. Outside, the city had already begun to rebuild its noise. Horns, distant chatter, the sigh of buses carrying people to other kinds of storms. For once, I didn't feel like I was in the middle of it. Just a woman in an apartment that didn't feel like exile anymore. My phone buzzed. Keller. Charges filed. Federal jurisdiction confirmed. Vincent Harmon surrendered this morning. He won't see sunlight for a long time. I stared at the message until the meaning caught up. It was over. Not the story, but the chapter where I was prey. By noon, the office looked different. Lighter somehow. Not the kind of light you buy. Earned light. The kind that comes after darkness runs out of arguments. Employees moved through the halls without whispering. The walls seemed to have stopped listening for footsteps that might mean trouble. Jackson was waiting by the glass elevator, hands in pockets, sleeves rolled, that faint half smile that said exhaustion had finally made peace with victory. Director Jensen, he said. I raised an eyebrow. That's still pending. Formality. The board's already voted. They'll announce Monday. And you didn't think to tell me? I thought you deserved to hear it in person. I didn't have words for a second. The titles, the press, even the vindication, they were all noise compared to the quiet certainty of standing in front of someone who had once believed in me when I barely remembered how to believe in myself. You ever think about how absurd this all is? I asked. A text meant for my brother, and now I'm the director of integrity for a billion-dollar company. Absurd is the good kind of luck, Jackson said. It's how the universe apologizes. I laughed. You think the universe feels guilty? Maybe it should, he said, eyes softening, for making people like you work this hard to be heard. Something in the air between us shifted. Not romantic, not platonic, something deeper, quieter. Recognition. Two people who had both been broken open by circumstance and decided to rebuild differently. Ava joined us in the conference room, her heels clicking like punctuation. Press wants a statement, she said, dropping a folder on the table. You two are trending again. The narrative's messy, but in a good way. You're the human part of the story. Is that what they're calling it now? I said. Human? She smirked. Better than miracle. Those burn out fast. I flipped through the folder. Draft statements, interview requests, think pieces dissecting me like a symbol. The whistleblower mom who saved Helix. The billionaire who listened. Corporate morality in the age of redemption. Jackson watched my face as I read. You don't owe them a performance, he said. I know, I said, but maybe I owe the story a better ending. He tilted his head. Meaning? Meaning I'll tell it. My version. No headlines, no filters. Just truth. Good, Keller said from the doorway, having arrived quietly as usual. That's the version that sticks. She set a folder beside Ava's. Thicker, heavier. Federal review closed. Vincent accepted a plea deal. Wire fraud, falsification of records, obstruction, minimum sentence, 12 years. Justice, I said softly. Not perfect justice, Keller said, but enough to make the next man think twice before rewriting the books. She extended a hand. You did good work, Mira. Don't forget that when the noise starts again. Noise? I asked. She smiled thinly. Power always hums. Integrity's job is to keep the pitch steady. The next few days passed in a rhythm that almost felt normal. Noah started daycare in the building, a new program. Jackson revived himself. Every morning I dropped him off in a room full of color and sound, kissed his forehead, and went to a job that felt like purpose instead of penance. The headlines faded, replaced by newer scandals and newer towers. People moved on, as they always do. But inside Helix, something had changed. Departments sent their audits voluntarily. Meetings started with transparency, not excuses. I'd walk past teams debating process improvements and smile. Small revolutions beginning in plain sight. One afternoon, I found Jackson in the old conference room, the same one where Vincent had once cornered him. He was alone, sleeves rolled, sketching something on a whiteboard. Déjà vu? I asked. He turned, marker in hand. I'm rewriting our onboarding. First page is about accountability. That's new. So is the company, he said, and we owe that to you. Don't, I said, shaking my head. We owe it to the truth. It was just waiting for someone stubborn enough to drag it out. Then we both qualify. Maybe that's why we work, I said. He looked at me a moment too long. We do, don't we? The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was full, a kind of peace that doesn't need to announce itself. Spring came, and with it, light that no longer felt temporary. I took Noah to the park on weekends, and we'd sit under the same maple tree near the pond. He'd crawl through the grass, chasing ducks he'd never catch, and I'd sip coffee and watch, thinking about how one wrong number had rewritten our lives. One afternoon, a delivery driver stopped at our bench. Package for Ms. Jensen, he said, smiling like he knew more than he let on. Inside the envelope was a single photo, grainy black and white, a text message frozen in time. My first one to Jackson. I'm sorry to bother you, but I just need $50 for baby formula. Please, I'll pay it back. Underneath in his handwriting the words, you already did. I traced the edge of the paper, tears blurring the ink. The world had spun 1,000 times since that message, but somehow it still felt like yesterday. A week later, Helix held a company-wide meeting to close the audit reforms. Jackson opened the session with a few simple words. We don't rebuild trust with speeches, we rebuild it by showing up. Then he called me to the stage. My knees went weak, but I went anyway. I'm not a public speaker, I said into the microphone. I'm an accountant who texted the wrong number, got a second chance, and decided to tell the truth, even when it wasn't convenient. The thing about truth is, it doesn't need to be beautiful to be right. It just needs to be seen. The room was silent, then applause. Not the kind that flatters, the kind that says, we see you. Afterward, Jackson met me by the exit. You still hate speeches? Less than I used to. Good, he said, because there's another one next quarter. This time you'll be introducing the new ethics program. I groaned. You're insufferable. He smiled. Accurate. We laughed, and for the first time, it didn't feel like surviving. It felt like living. That evening, back home, I tucked Noah into bed. He reached for my necklace, giggling, then fell asleep with the unbothered peace only children know. I sat by the window watching the city pulse below. Somewhere, another woman was probably staring at her phone, debating whether to send a message she couldn't afford to send. Maybe she'd hesitate. Maybe she'd press send anyway. Maybe the universe would apologize again, because sometimes the smallest act of desperation isn't the end. It's the door. And sometimes on the other side of that door, someone is already waiting, ready to listen. I looked at my phone, at the text thread that started everything, and whispered to the night, thank you. Then I turned off the light,